What's up, guys? I'm Shane, and welcome back to the Illegal Shift NFL podcast, where I give my thoughts on the week that was in the NFL and give you my picks on the games coming up this weekend. Now, I think the first place we have to start with this one is a better explanation from me. Last week, I tried to do just a picks video that didn't go very well. I feel like if I constrain myself to a time limit, it's not going to work out. I'm going to overthink it and everything like that, so this is just going to go as long as it goes. Could be a half hour. I don't think I'm going to push an hour. I don't think I have that many thoughts, but we'll see how it goes. You guys know because you already see the runtime. Now, obviously, there's a couple big storylines floating over this week, some of them a continuation from last week, but the big one is the fact that the Texans fired Bill O'Brien, and it was a little shocking just because the Texans seemed to promote Bill O'Brien every single time there was a questionable decision made by him. Like, I just thought he was going to be owning the team within the next 4 years at the rate it was going. So the fact that they actually fired him is surprising. The fact that they fired him after 4 games is surprising, especially considering the first 3 that he played. But I do believe Bill O'Brien as a coach, he was pretty good. Bill O'Brien, the GM, was probably one of the worst ones we've seen in recent history. I mean, I've criticized him in the past. Trading DeAndre Hopkins for nothing, like a washed-up halfback and a second-round pick. Meanwhile, you see what the Bills gave up for Stephon Diggs, and you see how well that's working out for him, too. Like, the Vikings might be okay with their haul, because they got Justin Jefferson, who might be a stud, but the Bills got someone who transforms their offense. And for the first couple of weeks, you could say that about the Cardinals with DeAndre Hopkins, too. Not that he's been slacking, but I think the rest of the offense's faults are starting to come to the surface. You've also got the Duke Johnson deal, you've got the Laramie Tunsil trade, the Brandon Cooks trade, all of these other things. Randall Cobb getting paid basically what DeAndre Hopkins wanted, but they traded DeAndre Hopkins anyways. It's all a mess. And as the GM, Bill O'Brien deserved to be fired. Now, according to Seth Payne, he was on the Around the NFL podcast the other day, and he said, it's actually, is it Easterly, whatever his name is, it's all politics over in that Houston organization. I'm not going to get too into detail. Obviously, I'm just hearing stuff from media outlets and everything like that. So I don't know what's going on in there, but it sounds like it is a hot mess over there. I don't know where the Texans are going to go from here. It sounds like they're just going to bring in more Patriots guys because, you know, you went from Bill O'Brien, you got a 73-year-old head coach, and Romeo Crennel as the interim. And what, you're just going to get Josh McDaniels? Maybe Matt Patricia on a retread can come in and be the D coordinator, too. Just all Patriots, why not? Maybe see if you can get Matt Castle to come out of retirement to be your quarterback while you're at it. Jeez. The only thing with that everyone's been talking about with the Texans, they do not have their first or second round picks. Both of those belong to the Miami Dolphins, so you know they're hoping that this Texans team keeps having trouble for the rest of the year. And not much going on for talent on this team besides Deshaun Watson. J.J. Watt obviously is still impactful, but he's on the other side of 30. And again, like, he could play for another 5-6 years and still be dominant. There's nothing about that. But for a long-term rebuild, is he going to be around for that? And I guess his contract is close to being up. Apparently there's no guaranteed money on it, so you could trade him. And little homerism here. As a Bills fan, I would gladly give up like a 4th or 3rd round pick for J.J. Watt. So, you know. Also, I am eligible. Houston, if you want to call me, I'll gladly take over either your GM or your head coach spot because I can probably get along better with that locker room. Apparently, Bill O'Brien got in a shouting match with J.J. Watt. Not a good sign. And I think I can make some better personnel decisions than he did. So the bar is very low. I think I qualify as it. I have led North Texas to 3 straight national championships. The other big piece of news, and this is just a continuation, more COVID cases. You have Stephon Gilmore. He came back as positive. So of all those Patriots, he's the only one who also came up with a positive test. Everything that happened with the Titans last week, again, I will reiterate, and I have said this before. From what it sounds like, one coach got it. His test came back positive, they sent him home, and then the day after the game, all the tests came back positive for the rest of the players, and they continued as such through the week. There is an incubation process with this virus, so you may contract it, and the positive might not show up for a couple days afterwards, so it doesn't sound like the Titans were necessarily being irresponsible with that. That's just something that's going to happen. And that's a criticism on the NFL as a whole for having this rigid schedule as opposed to putting in a couple extra bye weeks here and there and pushing back the schedule. They have dates scheduled for the Super Bowl. They can push it back into March if they have to. So you could have easily added a week 18 and 19, thrown 1 or 2 bye weeks in there. This way, every team is off, so if you have to reschedule a game, you can do that instead of shuffling around everyone. Now with the Titans, the stories come out that apparently they had a practice out, like after they closed the facility that Monday after the Vikings game. The players got together at a school and held their own practice. Now, here's the thing. A lot of people are saying they should have forfeited the Steelers games. Some people are saying they should forfeit the Bills game this week, and they should be disciplined, and the players should be suspended, and this and that. And while I get it, the issue here is it's the NFL. So they shut down the facility and the testing. We already went through all that. Now, the players held this practice, but they texted the coaches and the rest of the Texans organization. So the players did what they were supposed to do. They asked. Okay, cool. They got permission. They held the practice, so it's not on the players. Now, as far as the coaches and everything else, they didn't do anything outside the rules either. Everything that came down. Now, the NFL is threatening stricter penalties. They're going to take draft picks away from people like John Gruden, who just refused to wear a mask. And even they're going to start forcing teams to forfeit, again, using the Raiders if they do some shenanigans like that. The problem is they sent that memo out on Tuesday of this week, so over a week after this practice took place. So technically, the Titans should not be disciplined for this whatsoever. It should be noted that what they did was highly irresponsible. It was not a good decision because this is still a pandemic, and I understand that you're trying to do your best to be the best at your craft, and that's respectable, but this was not a very wise decision. I'm trying to beat around the bush. It was dumb, and they shouldn't have done it. It was a dumb decision, and I don't know how, like, I understand the players are going to want to play, and I get that, and the coaches are going to want to egg on their guys, and that's cool, but someone in that organization should have had the wherewithal to be like, hey, no, because you could spread it, and now they get more positive tests, and the problem this week, they're playing the Bills, but the Bills also are playing the Chiefs on Thursday Night Football, so it's not like you can just push this game back to Monday or Tuesday. Like, they'll have to postpone it again if these tests are going to keep coming up, if they can't get this under control this week. And now what do you do then? Because you don't have another bye week. And this is where week 18 will be added because they're going to want their games all played. I'm not saying the Titans should forfeit the game. I'm not saying they should be forced to do that. It was a stupid decision, but it was within the rules. And guys, for the love of God, if you're not a Titans fan, avoid Titans Twitter right now because holy cow. Holy cow. They are going off and super defensive, and as someone who lives in Massachusetts, this is sounding a lot like Patriots fans during Deflategate, but I get Deflategate, though. Like, I'm not to, bring this one back up, but the science, supported the fact that it wasn't necessarily, like, overly deflated balls, and yada, yada, yada. We won't rehash the whole storyline, but kind of a similar situation. The Titans... No, the media is going to call for them to forfeit games, and I'm sure Stephen A. Smith is going to get on there with some sort of strong opinion, and that's what he does. And Skip Bayless will say something ignorant because he's a walking piece of human trash. And it sucks. It's a terrible situation, and this is the problem with the way the NFL has done this because they've basically said, we're the NFL, and we can do it, and you can have fans in the stand, and you can do this and that, and we're not going to hold people accountable, and we're not going to do a bubble or anything like that. Which is fine, but you see how the lack of a bubble hurt Major League Baseball. Now, they recovered, and actually the Marlins are they're not doing too well, but they're in the playoffs this year. The Cardinals also managed to play 60 games. They had to play a lot of doubleheaders. They made it work. NBA, there's presumably one game left if the Lakers take care of business. I don't believe they had a single positive test. They had one player whose name, Lou Williams, I think it was, got booted out because he had to go to the strip club. Otherwise, that went off without a hitch. So you see the NBA as sort of like being ahead of the curve, and they did it safely, and everyone was fine. And you see the NFL, and it's sort of like business as usual, just with less people in the stands, and it's just terrible. I mean, no one's nearly as bad as college football, where they're like, yeah, half our roster has COVID, but the other half can still play. It's fine. We have 125 player rosters. It's cool. It's just another example of people not taking this seriously, and it's the reason why it continues today. It's just comical at this point, and nerve-wracking, because this isn't going to go away anytime soon. And I'm hoping that we get a full NFL season here, but I've got a feeling we're going to be sitting here in like week 9 and be like, man, Josh Allen was an MVP candidate, huh? And Russell Wilson finally would have gotten to shine. It's too bad that 4 of the teams came down with COVID on the entire squad, and we had to just postpone the whole season. I just feel like that's where we're going to go. But, I want to be an optimist. I'm going to will it into existence in my head that we are going to have a full season. And with that in mind, let's take a look at the games. Now, what I'm going to do is, as I do this, I'll give sort of a little recap on my thoughts of the games that happened previously with some of these teams, but we're not going to do a full recap of Week 4. We're just going to look at the Week 5 games, some thoughts and stuff we learned from last week. Starting with tonight's game, the Thursday night matchup, Tampa Bay at Chicago. And what we learned last week was that I was right in what I said about Nick Foles last week. He's a great story. He'll be remembered forever, but he's not a quarterback you can build your team around. He gives that spark every now and then off the bench, and it's like, I thought we learned this with Ryan Fitzpatrick. Like, he's a great stopgap, but Chicago, you're going to need someone at quarterback. And again, and it's the national narrative, you could have had Cam. You could have done it. You even could have taken a flyer on like Jameis. Like, you could have had something different. And you said, nah, we'll trade a pick for Nick Foles, and we'll be fine with him and Mitch. Okay. Now, as far as Tampa Bay, I mean, they look good. Like, overall, they look good. They're not healthy. I feel like all their wide receivers are injured all the time. I don't even know who their wide receivers are now. I know O.J. Howard's out for the year. I know Gronk is washed. I mean, that dude is making bank this year to not really do very much. I don't even think he has 100 yards receiving on the year. So, I know he doesn't have a touchdown. Now, Gronk brings more to the table than that, but I don't think he's bringing anything to the table now. And Tom Brady looks good. I don't think he's a top 10 quarterback in the NFL right now, but I also think that's just the state of the quarterback play right now. And the fact that he's not hurting his team at 43 years old is remarkable in itself. I mean, will he make it to 50? No, probably not. Honestly, I'd be surprised if he made it to 45, but I also wouldn't put it past him. Tampa looks good, and the NFC looks kind of loaded right now. I'm not sure that they can make the Super Bowl this year, but if everyone starts clicking on all cylinders on that team, they could. It's just, you never know, because teams get hot in the beginning of the season. We'll get to them in a couple games, but Buffalo's 4-0 for the first time since 2008. That was the year Tom Brady had the torn ACL and didn't play. The Bills finished 3rd in the division that year. They went 4-0, and I think they finished 7-9. So, these 4-0 teams, man, they could always fall apart. But I think in this game, I'm going to take Tampa. I think that's the safe bet. I think Tom Brady's going to shine. And Chicago, their defense is doing some things, but that offense, they're not going to do much. Now, moving on to the Sunday games, one game that I'm having a little bit of trouble picking is Carolina at Atlanta. Now, Carolina has looked really good. Matt Rule might have actually turned out to be a good hiring. Teddy Bridgewater is looking like he's having himself a pretty good season. And even without Christian McCaffrey, they seem to be doing just fine for themselves. The thing is with Atlanta, it has been tragic for them. But unlike some other teams who are 0-4, they haven't quit on their coach. And they are a very, very loaded offense, clearly. And I just feel like one of these days they're going to win, and I don't see them going to 0-5. I mean, they could be above 500 right now if, they don't blow these leads. So maybe I'll be kicking myself for it, but I think this is where Atlanta gets a win over Carolina. It's a great story for Carolina. I mean, I don't think they're going to end up with the first overall pick now, which is great, because we thought that's where it was going into the season. It seemed like they were going to be one of the contenders for the number 1 overall pick. Washington was in there a lot, which could still happen. And honestly, I kind of thought the Jets would be going into the season, and they seem firmly in the driver's seat right now. So I do like Atlanta in this game just because I think their offense is that dynamic and that dangerous that I just think this is a spot where they get their first win. Now, next up, my beloved Buffalo Bills against the Titans that I already talked at length about. I don't know if this game's even going to happen. Again, the rule on this podcast is I'm going to take the Bills because I'm a Bills homer, and I don't want to pick against my team and be rooting for me to get the pick right, which means my team loses. So I'm going to always stick with Buffalo. And hey, they're 4-0 on the season right now. Again, Josh Allen MVP candidate. A Pro Bowl would be cool. You know, I thought everyone, including me, thought he was kind of going to be a bust, or at the very, I thought best case scenario, middling quarterback. Maybe the best case scenario, he could be like a Matt Stafford type where maybe he puts up some stats, but you never really do much with them. We're all wrong right now. We are all wrong right now, and I am happy to be wrong so far, and I hope it stays up. Now, realistically, if this game is played, the Bills' problem is their run defense. You can kind of run on them, and what does Tennessee do best? So if they get to play, and Tennessee has a full complement of players, let's assume that Tannehill isn't one of the people out with COVID, and Derrick Henry isn't, then I think Tennessee could win this game, but I'm going to pick the Bills again as a homer. But again, that's even if this game is played. Who knows if this game will ever be played? This is going to be probably the biggest storyline going forward. Although, next up, all these games are tainted now. So you've got the Las Vegas Raiders at the Kansas City Chiefs. The Raiders, again, John Gruden is sort of the reason they're putting in these rules. Everyone went to Darren Waller's charity event, and no one was wearing a mask. They said it was for photo ops. Maybe that's the case, but either way, it's not looking good. And the Raiders seem like a team that could ruin this whole season. And then Kansas City, Stephon Gilmore test positive for coronavirus, and I'm sorry to his mother, Patrick Mahomes. I'm trying to break that habit. Patrick Mahomes is hugging Stephon Gilmore after the game. And it's not like it was a quick one. It looked like they got close enough. So you gotta know Patrick Mahomes has already taken probably 3 COVID tests so far, and he's probably taking 2 or 3 of them a day for the rest of the week. So who knows what his status is. For right now, I'm going to take Kansas City because they're clearly, if they're not the best team in the NFL, they're one of the teams mentioned up there right now. I think Kansas City's the best team in the NFL, but, as long as Patrick Mahomes is playing, they'll be fine. And even without Patrick Mahomes, they could still win anyways, because who knows with this Raiders team. Derek Carr says he's sick of losing, but it's your fault, bud. You don't want to lose. Start throwing the ball more than 2 yards down the field. I have arthritis in my shoulders, and I think I would throw the ball farther than Derek Carr does right now, and that's a sad place to be. The Raiders aren't bad, though. They're a pretty good team, and as long as they just wear their damn masks, and including Gruden, they should be fine, but I think Kansas City's just too much for them right now. Next up, we got the Arizona Cardinals at the New York Jets. The sad, pathetic Jets. Adam Gase is still the worst coach in the NFL right now. He was not the first one fired. I don't know how that happened. They might just let him finish out the season. If they're going for the first overall pick, if they think Darnold's not the answer, who, by the way, is not starting this game. This is when I found out Joe Flacco was still in the league. He's on the Jets. So he'll be starting at quarterback this game. That's already not good. But if they've already decided to move on from Darnold, you might as well let Gase finish out the season and guarantee that first overall pick and go on for Trevor Lawrence. Arizona has struggled the last couple of weeks, but I think Kyler Murray is real. I think that's the thing. I think he fits in well with Cliff Kingsbury, so hopefully Cliff is a lot better in the NFL than he was at Texas Tech, but that remains to be seen. DeAndre Hopkins, who, again, I mentioned earlier, he's still going to make an impact. He's still one of the 5 best receivers in the NFL, if not higher. I feel like even saying just top 5 is a slight against him. I mean, he's incredible. So you got to take that seriously. Unfortunately, the rest of the team seems to be terrible around them. So I'm not sure, but I'm going to take Arizona here because I don't ever want to pick the Jets. I don't want to pick them. They'll probably go 1-15 and 2-14. So picking against them each week, I'm going to have a pretty good record. Next up, we got the lowly Philadelphia Eagles, who are in first place in the NFC East. What a sad state of affairs that is. playing against a Pittsburgh team that is really ticked off that they didn't play last week. Eric Ebron's upset because he's going to miss a birthday party. I don't know. Ebron's made a good amount of money. I'm pretty sure he can reschedule the party, but I understand it. I mean, I've decided jobs, I don't want to take them because there's no way I'm working Christmas. I want to spend it with my family, so I appreciate that sentiment. I'm going to take Pittsburgh in this game. They're going to be motivated. They're going to be upset. They're going to take it out on the Eagles, who have not looked good. They won that game barely against the 49ers, and the 49ers were still missing most of their important players. They had George Kittle back, and he's a beast. We'll get to him after. But I don't see them doing it. And I still think at 1-4-1, they still might be in first place in the division come the end of the day. Although I think Dallas, they still can be with that tie. Next up, it's the Los Angeles Rams at the Washington football team. Washington has switched their quarterbacks. They're going with one of the Allens. Is it Grayson Allen? Is it Kyle Allen? I don't remember which Allen it is. The one who was on Carolina last year. He's the starting quarterback. The fact that I don't know his name is probably telling about how bad he's going to be. I get if you're over Dwayne Haskins. Ron Rivera has no reason whatsoever to stick with him. He didn't draft him. He has no real commitment to him whatsoever. So if he doesn't think he's the right choice, then get rid of him. I'm kind of surprised it's not Alex Smith yet. I'm wondering if that's just because he's not physically ready. Although apparently he's the backup. So if worse comes to worse, he might actually see the field this week. But the Rams, they look bad against the Giants. Teams are going to have off days. Again, we're only a quarter of the way through the season. It's hard to really judge these teams. Are the Rams the team that gave up the 28-3 lead to the Bills? Are they the team that came back? Or are they the team that played the stinker against the Giants? There's somewhere in that range. I'm not sure where. But I do believe that the Rams are going to be good enough to take care of Washington. I do believe in this offense. I believe Aaron Donald, he's the MVP of the league right now. He's the MVP. Good God, that guy. Nothing makes me happier than when I start seeing the Aaron Donald highlights flowing through Twitter. It's what I live for. That's all I want. I just want my Twitter feed. I just want to see Aaron Donald highlights. That's it. Him and give me some Quentin Nelson highlights. Am I weird for that, for wanting to see the line play? I don't know, but those are incredible to watch. He is dominant. Dominant in a way that I don't even think J.J. Watt got to at his peak like 5 or 6 years ago. So, he's not going to win MVP, but he deserves to be in the conversation. I hope he gets at least one vote the way Bobby Wagner did a few years ago. But yeah, I'm definitely taking the Rams in this one. Next up, a nice division game. We got the Bengals at the Ravens. Joe Burrow is incredible. I don't know what his numbers look like now, but he was on pace to break the all-time rookie record for passing yards in the season and passing touchdowns. He was on pace to break both. Those are held by two different people. Andrew Luck has the yardage record and Baker Mayfield has the touchdowns. And he was going to do both. And on top of that, only throw 5 picks through the whole season. So it looks like the Bengals finally have a quarterback. He is probably already the third best Bengal of the last 30 years. It probably goes Boomer Esiason, then Andy Dalton, and now Joe Burrow with 4 games under his belt. I think. Oh, no, okay, Carson Palmer before he got hurt, I guess. All right, so he's still 4th. But that's not good for 30 years for a guy with 4 games experience to be up there. Then again, as a Bills fan, Josh Allen is the best quarterback since Doug Flutie, so I guess I'm not one to judge. But I'm taking the Ravens here. They are, they lost that game to the Chiefs. I think the Chiefs just knew how to scheme against them. Lamar Jackson might not be necessarily in the MVP conversation at this point, but I think he can get right back in there. He is just so much fun to watch. He is so incredibly talented. They've built such a good team around him. They've put a good scheme for him to thrive in. And, it's the Ravens defense. They've just always been good. Maybe not statistically. Maybe DVOA won't necessarily reflect it. But, the Ravens are going to do something. And again, underrated, but John Harbaugh used to be a special teams coach. That's why their kicker's so good. That's why their special teams are always at the top of the league. And that does make a big difference. Another divisional matchup, but this one's a little, and no one wants to watch this one, I don't think. Jacksonville at the Texans. Jacksonville, I don't even know what to say about them right now. Gardner Minshew is not the long-term answer, but he's not terrible. Like, maybe he's the worst quarterback starting in the NFL right now, or maybe he's just in, like, the bottom 10, but he's still kind of fun, and he's still young, and he's still not, like, he's not awful. Like I said, again, it just shows how good the quarterbacks are getting right now. And the Texans, yeah. But I'm taking the Texans here, and I'm actually pretty confident in this one because there's a weird trend whenever a coach gets fired the first game under the interim coach. I don't know if there's an exact statistic, but I feel like 100% of the time the team with the interim coach on his first game wins. And I think Houston, I probably would have picked them over Jacksonville anyways, so Romeo Crennel, go get it done. Go get a dub. Oldest coach in NFL history once he is the head coach for this game, once this game kicks off. So, it'll be the oldest coach to ever win a game until Belichick passes that. Moving on to the afternoon games, we got the Miami Dolphins at the San Francisco 49ers. The Dolphins are frisky. They really are. Ryan Fitzpatrick, you know what you're getting out of him. Hot and cold. Like, literally in human form. And San Francisco is still banged up, but again, Kittle's back. They played competitive against the Eagles. Almost won that game. That Hail Mary came close. I don't know if it's going to be Nick Mullins or CJ Beathard playing at quarterback, so that's a slight problem, but I think the 49ers still get it done here against the Dolphins. I think the Dolphins should aim to try and get the number 1, number 2 overall picks if the Texans keep playing like trash. I would love to see like Mel Kiper's head explode when they have both of the top 2 picks. Yeah, I don't know. It's hard to judge either one of these teams. I don't know if we'll see Tua this year. I don't know if we should see Tua this year. He's got those injuries. I'd love to see him at some point. I think he's going to be really good. Unfortunately, I don't want to see him in my division all the time, but and San Francisco, who knows? Who knows? Kyle Shanahan's a really good coach, and they're getting people back slowly. I don't know when Jimmy G is going to come back. I don't know if he's going to make that big of a difference, but considering what Nick Mullins did last week, he probably will. And I don't know. I'm just going to take the 49ers here. Up next, we got the Colts at the Browns. I'm going to take the Colts here. Cleveland's look really good, but their schedule has also been soft. But the Colts' schedule has also been soft. But I trust the Colts more than I trust the Browns, so I got to go with the Colts here. The Browns ran for over 300 yards on the ground against the Cowboys, and no running back had over 100. It was an entire team effort, which is impressive to do, but the Colts might have one of the 2 or 3 best defenses in the NFL this season, and I'm not sure how that's going to go for Cleveland this week. Phillip Rivers has the ability to throw a game away. This could be a 1-touchdown, 4-interception kind of stinker. Myles Garrett could eat his lunch, although Colts have one of the best offensive lines in football, so if anyone's going to stop him, it's going to be this team. So I like the Colts here. But again, I don't know anything about this game. If I'm wrong on this one, I wouldn't be surprised either, because I've been underestimating the Browns all season, and I don't know. They got blown out by the Ravens and then beat 3 mediocre to bad teams. I don't know what to make of them right now. Speaking of those mediocre teams, one of them's playing the New York Giants at the Dallas Cowboys. Or wait, did they play both these teams already? I don't actually know. I don't remember the Browns schedule already. The Giants, I don't get it. I don't see it with Danny Dimes. I've never understood it. Nothing about him ever seemed impressive to me. He made a couple throws. He got that weird win against Tampa last year, so they thought he was going to be like a monster. And now there are questions like, should they draft Trevor Lawrence if they have the first overall pick? That's I don't know. I just feel like you don't go in that direction if you think he's actually the truth. Like, I don't think the Browns should look at drafting Trevor Lawrence if they had the first overall pick, because I think Baker's still got something. So the fact that we're giving up on Daniel Jones that quickly tells me he wasn't that good to begin with. The Cowboys, they better win this game. I'm picking them, because if they don't, they better fire Mike McCarthy before he tries to awkwardly shake the hand of Joe Judge, even though it's a pandemic and you shouldn't be shaking anyone's hand. I don't even know what to make of this team. I'm surprised Mike Nolan is still employed as the defensive coordinator right now. This defense is awful, and I don't know how he still has a job. Well, I do know how he has a job, because Mike McCarthy's protecting his buddy, who used to be his head coach back when they were in San Francisco 15 years ago, 20 years ago, however long ago it was. all of these offseason storylines about how Mike McCarthy was going through when he was studying analytics and he was trying to be smarter and be advanced and basically trying to go in the model of like what Andy Reid did, because Andy Reid, despite being someone who you look at and be like, that's not an advanced head coach, has always been one step ahead as far as offense goes. So they thought they were getting this offensive mastermind, and then he hires his buddy to be his defensive coordinator who hasn't been in the league in like 6 or 7 years, and you start to realize that that was all a farce. And I feel like they just went from Jason Garrett to a slightly better Jason Garrett. So I'm sorry to Dak Prescott. He looks amazing. He's on pace for almost 7,000 yards this year, which is nuts. Nuts. I don't know how he's doing it, but that offensive line is not nearly as good as it used to be. When you have the center, Travis Frederick, he retired. You've got the right tackle out for the season. He's injured. And the offensive line is so banged up. Like, they are not that same offensive line that sort of made me root for the Cowboys at one point with DeMarco Murray. And I don't know if they can protect Dak Prescott. So I'd love to see him get that all-time passing record. But I got a feeling he might have to do it in like 13 games because he might be out injured for a few of them. He's going to get squashed. Not by this team, but by somebody. The Giants are just terrible. They're awful. Panthers lose their running back, and they look fine. Giants lose their running back, and you see why they invested such a high draft pick on a running back. Joe Judge shouldn't be fired after one season. He shouldn't be, because he inherited this mess. Unlike the head coach of the Detroit Lions claiming he inherited a mess, no, he actually inherited one. But it's just so awful. It's so awful. This division's so bad. But everyone's talking about what's the worst record where you can win the division, and I believe it's 3 wins. I believe if you go 3-13 and you win both games against one of the teams in your division, and you split with one and lose both to another, but the rest, like if you go 3-3 in your division and everyone else goes like 2-4, I believe that mathematically checks out. Or no, you have to go 3-3 with another team. The math works out somewhere where you can go 3-13 and win the division, which is fun to look at. But it's so rare. Like, I could still see one of these teams going like 8-7-1 if it's the Eagles, or like 9-7 or 8-8 or something at least, in winning the division. I don't think we're gonna have a 6-10 division champion, but God, it feels like we're going that way. Next up, we got the Denver Broncos, who are probably playing the son of some other quarterback from the 90s who wasn't very good. They're taking on the New England Patriots, who are the home team. I'm going to take the Patriots. There's nothing to say about the Broncos. They've been decimated by injury, and a lot of that's unfortunate. You've got their top quarterback out, their top running back out, their top wide receiver out, their top defensive player out. What are they supposed to do when they were sort of one of those teams who you could see challenging for that 6th or 7th wild card spot? Like, you know, maybe a 9-7, 10-6 season if everything really breaks right, and then all your players go out, and I don't know what they're supposed to do. They look good in glimpses, but I think New England here, I don't know if they're going to have Cam back for this one. I'm not sure if they will. But I think even with whatever quarterback they have, they might just run the ball and never they might run the Army offense and like pass the ball 3 times. That might be what they do, and that's probably enough to win. And I think Bill Belichick is somewhere smiling, trying to game plan that. Like, he's going to lock Josh McDaniels in a broom closet and just be like, nope, this is what we're running. We're running the wishbone this week. And I'm here for it. I would love to watch that, because Bill Belichick, he could do anything. I mean, he's the greatest coach of all time, and he has been tormenting me as a Bills fan for 20 years. Sunday Night Football, it's the Minnesota Vikings at the Seattle Seahawks. Vikings finally got a win last week. It was against the Texans. It's what cost Bill O'Brien his job. They're still not good. The Seattle Seahawks, let's just see how good Russell Wilson can be. Although I think statistically, Josh Allen is on par with him now. Like, that really, really hot start. I think the difference is Russell Wilson I don't think he has a rushing touchdown this year. I think he has 16 touchdowns, but they're all through the air. Josh Allen has like 15 total. But everyone's just sort of catching up to Russell Wilson, but don't let that fool you. Like, he is the front runner for the MVP, and he deserves to be, because they're not going to give it to Aaron Donald again. But I think Russell Wilson should be the front runner for MVP right now, even though it's just a quarter mark of the season. I think that's a safe place to be. Again, he's one of my favorite players because he's like the best case scenario of Doug Flutie, because I I love Doug Flutie, undersized guy who could run around and throw the ball. That's just how I've always loved Russell Wilson. I'm like, oh yeah, he's Black Doug Flutie. That's how I thought of him. And he is way more than that. What an incredible season for him so far. Incredible season for the Seahawks, off to an undefeated start. I think the Seahawks are going to take care of business here. Although, knowing them, it's probably going to be a one-score game in the fourth quarter because that's just what they do for some reason. But who am I going to take, Russell Wilson or Kirk Cousins? I'm going to take Russell Wilson, and I'll be happy with that. And then Monday Night Football, this game used to have a lot more meaning. Los Angeles Chargers at the New Orleans Saints in the Breeze Bowl. I feel like this has happened too many times for it to be important anymore, especially now since Phil Rivers is no longer there. I'm going to take the Saints here because they still look really good. And the Chargers, someone else probably got injured while I was recording this podcast. I mean, I think it's like 1 a.m. West Coast time right now. But somehow someone got up to use the bathroom and like tore their ACL on the way there and they're out for the season because that's just the Chargers' luck. And I feel super bad for them. Herbert looks good. Tyrod Taylor is probably going to be a billionaire after this, after he sues the crap out of this team doctor. But once again, he comes in, gets to start like 1 or 2 games, and then he's done and someone else is taking over the franchise. Poor Tyrod Taylor. He might be the starting quarterback of the Washington football team, whatever their name is next season, and then get benched for whatever rookie they draft. So the cycle will continue. But the Saints look really good because of Alvin Kamara. Drew Brees does look kind of washed. He had a couple good plays this past game, but I think he's done. This is probably his last season. Everything seems to be pointing that way. He's already got a contract with, I forget if it's NBC or CBS, one of them. Like, he's already got a media contract, so this is probably it for him. And this team is really good. Between them and the Bucs, this is really good. But yeah, I'm going to take New Orleans here. I still like them to win the division after a quarter of the season. As good as Tampa Bay has looked, I still like New Orleans here. Although another interesting race to see out of this one is Justin Herbert for Joe Burrow for Offensive Rookie of the Year. I think it should go to Burrow so far, but Herbert's going to make it interesting down the stretch. So any awards that can be won by these teams, even if they don't make the playoffs, at least there's that going on. And in the 2 teams on the bye, Detroit, I don't know how Matt Patricia's still employed. He should have been fired already. But I guess they're just going to keep him around. I don't know. He's awful. And in Green Bay is 4-0. I don't know who's playing wide receiver anymore. I've got a missed phone call. They might have called me to play wide receiver for them. They were going so far down the depth chart. And Aaron Rodgers still makes him look like an all-pro. He said it himself. His down years are some quarterback's career years. And he's back with a vengeance, so good on him. But Green Bay is the class of that division by far. So again, recapping real quick, my picks are Tampa over Chicago, Atlanta over Carolina, Buffalo over Tennessee, Kansas City over Las Vegas, Arizona over the Jets, Pittsburgh over Philly, Los Angeles Rams over Washington, Baltimore over Cincinnati, Houston over Jacksonville, San Francisco over Miami, Indy over Cleveland, Dallas over the New York Giants, New England over Denver, Seattle over Minnesota, and New Orleans over Los Angeles Chargers. Keep forgetting that they have all these teams in both conferences. And that'll wrap this one up. So let me know in the comment section below, because this is only going to be on YouTube, because I still haven't figured out how to get my podcast to go anywhere else, and I probably won't bother for a while. But leave it in the comment section below your predictions for this week. I went 11-4 last week. I think some of you guys did better than me down there, because I was the only one who picked Dallas over Cleveland, so that's not looking good. So, congratulations, Kenny Beardman, on your win. And, yeah, that'll wrap it up. Thank you guys so much for listening. If you liked this podcast, please be sure to hit like down below. If you want to see more from me doing podcasts, NCAA content, or even the occasional Animal Crossing stream, be sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell to get it delivered directly to your inbox every single time I upload. Everything you leave down in the comment section below, I will always respond to, unless you are the trolliest of trolls, or if you're involved in Titans Twitter this week, because I've already ticked off enough of you so far. Thank you guys so much for listening. I'm Shane. I'm out.